I'm Saba, I'm the head of Focus Online Earth, and the topic of this panel is circular economy, the most important story you have never heard. And for many German companies, circular economy has gone from green fantasy to an actual business case. But even though circular economy has become one of the most powerful climate tools in our arsenal, it's seldom point of public discussion. How do we make a topic popular that most people don't really know about? This is a talk about better storytelling, and we have experienced experts here on stage with me who will be discussing this topic with me. I will briefly introduce you to the panelists. Anabel Ternès. Anabel, you are an expert when it comes to sustainability and digitalization. You are a founder of sustainable startups. You are an author, a futurologist, and you are also a communication expert. You just published a new book about green leadership. Hans-Peter, you are an independent mobility expert, specialized in smart mobility, smart cities, and smart data. And with your work, you are shaping the future of mobility. And not to forget, you are a former manager in the automotive industry. You worked for BMW, Mini Deutschland, and Audi. And Manon, Littek. Manon, you are co-founder of the Green Generation Fund, and you are standing out as one of Europe's leading investors in food tech and green tech industry. And with the Green Generation Fund, you support and you invest in breakthrough innovations and startups in this field in Europe and the US. And Sophia from Bonin, you are a mission lead Circular Future at Project Together. We all know Project Together. You are co-host of this conference, and on Wednesday you've just held the Circular Future Festival. And in your role, you and your team, you are building a collaborative network of change makers to really drive the circular transformation here in Germany. So, yeah, as you can see, we have experts here from different fields, from different industries. And yeah, my first question goes to Anabel. Anabel, circular economy here in Germany is often associated with recycling, but we all know this perspective is limited. It's much more, and it's complicated. It's a complicated topic, much like many other sustainable topics. And my question is, how can we make a complex topic like circular economy more easily and more comprehensively understood by the general public?
Thank you for this important question. And of course, thank you for introducing me. I'm very happy to be here today because I love the Circular Republic Festival, and I think it's super important, more important than ever. And I mean, this festival is, for example, something which is just important to understand this. We have to come together in person, virtually. We have to discuss what circular economy needs, what it means at first. We have to discuss samples, and we have to exchange cases and bring them in other companies, bring them in the world, discuss this with youth, but also older generations. It's important to bring this under people. And I think on the one hand, it's important to use narratives. This is super important. The narratives everybody understands. On the other hand, we really need real examples from companies like Patagonia, for example, which can easily forward this idea of what circular economy means. And as you said, there's so much phrases about recycling and reusing and rebuilding, that a lot of people are confused about this and try to put under one phrase everything, which is of course super clear, and at first not bad because they just talk about that. That's good at all. But to go deeper into it, it's of course important to understand. It's important for companies to understand that as an idea for them for long-lasting, sustainable success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Anabel, how can we really encourage people to participate, to be an active part of the circular economy? Maybe you have 3 practical tips for the companies and the startups here and how they can encourage people to really be a part of it.
I think first of all, it's important to let them be part of it. So often companies just do something, and then after they've done something, say, hey, employees, look at me, I've done something really great for you. And then they're they're thinking and not understanding why the employees don't like that. I think it's important to involve the employees from the beginning, let them discuss the ideas, and be not shy, be brave enough to listen also to ideas which are different than your own idea, and this is important. I mean, sustainability doesn't need to get one opinion. It's important to discuss the different ideas, different opinions, to figure out what are maybe constraints, what are maybe fears, where people are frightened to do this or that, or insecure about this or that. I mean, it's important to understand all of this, to understand why they aren't that motivated as you are, for example. And then I think it's important to put this under the right phrase. So often in Germany we talk about you are not allowed to do this, you need to do this, so it's a kind of must behind it. I mean, circular economy is so great, it's a present, it's a super great opportunity that we are able to reuse products, that we are able to do something for the world better, we like to live in. And this is not about doing that we can only use less, or that we have to forbid us this or that. It's about getting back more than ever we have expected. So I think if we want to have 3 tips for companies: first, involve your employees from first. Second, talk about this with great narrators, with positive narrators. Ask the employees to put those narrators together and give them money to found something on their own. Don't be always in it and try to guide everything. Let them do this on their own. It's great what employees can do. And I often hear CEOs say, oh, I'm not sure what employees will do with the money. Maybe they will do some silly things. But why? I mean, you have to give people chances. And then if we're talking about mistake culture, there's also mistake culture should be allowed also in circular economy. Not everybody can do everything right from scratch. So third, it's try. Try is the first and most important thing. Not everything will be 100% perfect, but you can do it better and better. And if there's a fourth, then let them imagine things. So for example, I mean, I brought this with me and I wanted to wear it, but I was not sure, and it's super hot because it's filled with plastic waste and it's from old t-shirts. But I mean, give them an idea to feel it with all sense it, what circular economy means. Give them an idea to be part of it. This is super important.
Thank you. Hans-Peter, can you relate to what Anabel is saying, or what is your approach, what is your story to tell or to convince people to use alternative and more sustainable mobility concepts like sharing?
My narrative is a lot to tell what is mobility for us and to make it very personal. So for me, it's like a personal need, like we breathe, we eat, we need shelter, we make love, and we want to move from A to B. And it's very deep in our souls, even, let's say, in the Western world, and a lot to do with personal autonomy and freedom of choice. You know, if you look now at the situation, we are stuck. We have a Verkehrsinfarkt, like a collapse of our traffic system. And so we need people to tell, if we don't change things, this personal freedom with motor vehicles will just not be possible. The transportation sector, I just know the numbers for Switzerland, are 38% to the whole CO2 emissions. So we really need to rethink how we use our cars, as an example, not bags, but cars. And we have now 48.99 motor vehicles in Germany. We have 49 people who have a license. So we are fully motorized, you know, and there are better, more intelligent ways how to use this capacity on the streets and still to stay mobile. And I think it needs these stories, and we don't want to prevent anything, but we want to preserve personal mobility, but we just need to rethink and reorganize the whole thing. And away from ownership to access, that's one of the big topics, that you don't need to own like a car, but you have access and have, in the best case, even more choice.
And I wonder, when it comes to mobility, don't you think that maybe a more radical communication approach would be more successful? Because, I mean, consumer behavior naturally changes when people face higher costs, and maybe higher taxes, higher fees, more regulations could also lead, to a push to this change. Because I grew up in Tübingen. I don't have a car, but having a big car in Tübingen is not fun. I mean, they make it really inconvenient, and maybe this could be also a way. I mean, I wonder, what do you think?
I listened to a guy from Philip Morris, and tobacco cigarettes did a very radical approach. They raised up the costs. They have these pictures. It really didn't help a lot. We still have 20 million people in Germany smoking an average 13 cigarettes a day. So I think that's not the only right way. We need higher costs, and the big problem is that the cost for mobility, goods and persons, are way too low looking at the real costs. And our economy, our economic prosperity relied a lot on cheap mobility the last decades. And now we need to rethink what are the real costs, what are the damages you don't pay for, and then get a real price for mobility. And in this way, the external costs are seen. And like a very simple example, like if you have in Munich a parking space, it costs 30 euro per year, so nothing. So people use their trunk for cars, for tennis rackets, whatever, and there is a big mismatch of cost for public space between how you use it for cars or other forms of transport, or if you look at city tolls. So when you really need to put a price badge on it and really get it right or justice, yeah. I drive a very small car, and this car, 3 of them would park on one space, but I still pay the whole space. So these simple ideas we need to look at, and it's very hard to change this because, let's say in our German auto nation, it's one of the very hot topics.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sophia, you have already practiced storytelling when it comes to circular economy. Maybe you can give us an example, and maybe you can share your experience and tell us how you engage people.
Maybe I start off first and build a little bit on Anabel, because I really like the question, why do we actually have to have a different take on the circular economy and really tell a different story? I think we're very good at this as a community to rely on facts and figures. Over the last 1.5 days, it was very dense with really important numbers, facts and figures. And yet, I don't know how you feel about it, but sometimes I also struggle to relate to some of the numbers. And I really believe that that's not just me, but that's the broader public as well. And I really feel that stories can help us to bridge that complexity and make it more tangible, what we're actually talking about. And I really feel with the circular economy, we really face that challenge that it is a very multifaceted, complex topic. It's not just a phenomenon like climate change, but it's really about kind of weaving a red thread between different elements of the value chains, really to explain what do resource extraction, transport, production itself, the way we consume, and then the way we treat waste, how is that actually interrelated? It's a very complex story to tell, I feel. And I really think it would be good for us to tell more stories that really kind of sensitize us for the problem that actually is in the world with the way we relate to resources. But also, as Anabel said, really kind of tell stories both about the future, like how can we actually imagine and dream a different world, but also show stories that kind of indicate what is feasible and what is already possible. So I think along those lines, I feel that we have to tell much more and much better stories. And coming back to your question, we have really tried a project together. We have a big mission on the circular transition, and we really try to experiment more and more with different narratives. So we created a big alliance last year on reusable to go, Mehrweg einfach machen, and the idea behind this was there was a window of opportunity with a new legislation, the Mehrweg-Angebotspflicht, but we really felt that it wouldn't really translate into reality probably, so we needed to really address the challenges, and one of the challenges definitely is there is no demand for reusable to go. So how can we actually activate demand? And two of the elements that we tried to experiment with in the campaign we tried to develop was, first of all, and that also goes back to Anabel, to really come up with a narrative around reusables that is not looking at the deficit and the problem we're facing, but really looking at the solution as such and why that's actually great and fun and why we need more of it and what actually enriches us by using it. So really finding kind of a positive twist, and I would wish for us that we find more and more of those positive twists in all of the things we do. And the second element was, I really think we all talk about collaboration all the time, and I really think we also need to collaborate much more around communication. So one of the things we try to do is really coordinate kind of a joint effort around the campaign and really find kind of a communicative framework and stories that helped startups from that industry, restaurants, big restaurateurs, civil society to come together and kind of get behind a campaign like that. And I think that's something I would love to see more also in other areas.
And what was the biggest challenge for you in these campaigns and this storytelling process?
I think there are some specific challenges that are just very specific to that field, reusables, and then there are some more overarching challenges. I think one of the challenges is that even though I say we need the more positive twist, it's also true that many consumers don't really see the problem. They don't really understand why the single-use package is actually not a great idea. The second thing is opportunity, that even though it's a legislation, we see that it's not implemented everywhere. So even if people want to use it, they still struggle to actually get it as an opportunity. So this is, I think, very specific for this very specific field. But I also think in general, if I kind of try to abstract it a little bit more about storytelling on the circular economy, I really think one of the struggles or challenges is that I feel that we really have to be very specific with the target groups we're trying to reach. So I really think the way I would communicate the circular transition towards a CEO of a very conservative company might be very different than communicating to Gen Z, for example. And I think it's overall, though, it's very much about reframing. So the circular economy is a business opportunity, it's about innovation, it's about resilience. That's maybe something that very much connects with the more conservative target group. I feel for Generation Z, it's much more about lifestyle, the fun, the kind of also the lightness behind it. It's about, not second-hand, it's about pre-loved items. And that changes something also for people, how they look at the stuff that they interrelate with.
When it comes to... Want to add something?
No, just pre-loved.
Okay. When it comes to encouraging people, Anabel, I want to ask you, is it also a little bit too much responsibility to place on individuals at some point? I wonder, I can understand when some people say, why is this my responsibility? That should be the responsibility of the government, of politicians, of big corporations. Why should I try to reduce waste while other big companies are producing more and more waste and not changing their way of packaging, for example? How can we react to this? How can we face this criticism?
Great question. And it reminds me to a comment on LinkedIn a few days ago where I wrote about one of the focus articles where I mentioned the reduction of CO2 by thinking twice about which email you have to send, or if you have to send an email with attaching a high-risk document. And there came a comment saying, okay, what should you care about? Think about the volcanoes, think about the war, think about these big things, and what are you doing? What are you doing at COP? It's a waste of time. We have to judge the people which are responsible for the wars. We have to judge the people which are going to conferences like COP and nothing happens afterwards. We just have to force these people that they have to do something, but it's not about us, because what I can do is so little. And comments like this, in the past it made me sad reading something like that. And there was also a discussion about when I want to drive further my SUV, can I just buy 3 trees somewhere which somebody else will plant somewhere? And I don't like this discussion because I mean, it's our planet and it's our future and the future of our kids maybe. And if I don't believe in that I can make things for the better, then I fall into a very childish is the wrong word, then I fall into a very weird idea about my situation here in the world, because then, and I heard a few kids talking about that, saying, okay, I mean, I can do everything I want, I can drive a SUV, I can produce a lot of waste, I take drugs, I don't care, because it doesn't make a big change if I'm doing things in a different way. I think it's a really wrong decision. It's a really wrong side on things, and therefore it's super important to give what Sophia and I talked about, and also you were asking me the question about narratives and about real examples, how much you can do if you start doing things on your own, how much you can do on thinking if you write an email to 100 people CC, if you write an email with an attachment which is more than 10 megabytes. I mean, of course, it's not comparable with the CO2 waste from a volcano, yes. But if we think always like that, then we won't change things for the better. It's about everybody. And I think it's important that we understand each other also as customers who can drive things into another direction. Because if we don't buy things which are made without durability, if we don't buy things which are just made for using and throwing away, then it's an industry which have to change, because they won't produce things anymore if nobody will buy it. So we have a lot of power as a consumer, and I think more than ever, also with the virtual power we have, and it's important that we see it like this. Otherwise, it can make us desperate.
Mm-hmm. Sophia,
just very quickly, because I think we really have to be better in telling stories, but we also have to be very clear about debunking myths. And I think there are a lot of myths out there about the circular economy as well. One of them we have talked about here in this space as well, about circular economy equating with recycling, which is really just one small part of the equation. But I also think it's about acknowledging that most of the time we're also overwhelming consumers. It's just very complex to understand what is actually the more sustainable or the circular options. So if we talk about recyclable, if we talk about compostable, it creates images that give people the impression they make the right choice. It doesn't translate into things are recycled and things are, it's really being composted. And those are nuances where I often feel we are kind of, you call it greenwashing or calling it, creating myths that make it so much more difficult for people to actually rely or kind of take good decisions. And I think one of the responsibilities we have is really create or design for clarity as well.
Sure. Can I correspond? Thank you, Sophia, for your words. I completely agree with you. I think it's super important that we have regulations on that, where different greenwashing is not allowed anymore. Because I think that consumers are really sometimes conflicted in understanding what product means, because there's so much written on it. No? You have there a badge, then you have here Miss Germany as supporting this product, and she's doing something on a rainforest, and you think, oh wow, I have a good feeling buying this product, but in the end you have a Tetra product, for example. I think it's super important important to work on competencies too, and therefore also strengthen education. It's important. I think it's super important to enable everybody to understand sustainability, and we aren't there. Sustainability is very complex. I mean, talking, for example, about planetary frames, for example, talking about aerosols. I mean, this is a huge science of everything what is about sustainability, but it's important that we find easy words to understand the whole system, the whole idea, that you as a customer find your way through this forest of greenwashing or of really honest products.
Thank you. I would like to take also a deeper look into the startups and their storytelling. Manon, you invest in startups, and I'm interested in your personal story. Why do you invest in startups in the food tech and green tech industry? I mean, you worked in media, you worked also at Burda, but you changed your career path. Why did you do that?
I think it's actually the most interesting job you can have at the moment,
cool.
Or in kind of our times. And I think the green tech and food tech ecosystems are really the most important ecosystem for the next 10 years. So we really have to drive transformation here, and we have to look for innovation. And I think startups are the driving motor. So from my background, I studied philosophy, so I've always been very curious, and then had a media career, or basically a career at Burda, more on the management side, everything about startups in the tech industry, Silicon Valley. And then 2016, I started for a large food company, their corporate venture arm, and went into impact food investing. And it's also a personal topic because I've always been vegetarian, very concerned about what I eat, what impact does it have. And I saw around 2016 that there's a huge market evolving, similar to what you see with tech and digital transforming in different industries. You saw it also in the international food system. Because we are rising to 10 billion people, we don't have enough resources to continue the agricultural system as we do it at the moment. So it was clear there needs to be change, and in Europe no one was really doing this. So I was very determined to start this, and since then I've been on that path. Yeah.
Interesting. And which startups or innovations will most significantly change we use or we produce and consume food? What would you say?
Yeah, I think there are kind of three main trends always. So one topic is, I think a lot of people know now about the alternative protein space, which came to the consumer side with Beyond Meat, is going now more and more again back to the upstream side, so more to the industry, a new ingredient. So because how we kind of produce proteins mainly from animal agriculture, it's not sustainable. It takes 1/3 of CO2 emissions. It is very resource efficient in terms of water and land usage. And also we have the whole topic of supply chain problems. So because of food security, which is becoming more important, we have a global challenge of warfare, we have a global food chain disruption, we have climate adaptation. So we have to find resilient food systems in food production, and needs to be localized. And one form is to look what are kind of ways to produce proteins. And the latest trend really is through fermentation and microbes. So you take yeast, you take E. coli bacteria, you take fungi, you ferment them, either bioengineer them through precision fermentation, or you do biomass fermentation, and create wholly nutritious proteins. So that's a huge trend at the moment on that side. Another big trend is really on the agricultural side. We have to move from conventional to regenerative agriculture. How the agriculture system is set up is not sufficient, and it's not sustainable. So 50% actually of soil carbon is lost because of monocultures, pesticides, etc., and the land is depleted. So there are movements now, and we did, for example, one investment into one company that is converting conventional farmers to regenerative, And then they have more climate resistance, they have higher yield, and they can also store a lot of carbon in the soil. So just one plastic example, if we just store 0.25 more carbon in the soil, the whole climate topic would be solved in the world. So I think a lot of people don't know it, but for the farmers to go into regenerative agriculture, it's also a second revenue stream. I think the third topic is always now coming into the topic of ingredients. And a very good example here is because we have resource efficiency topics and scarcity of resources. So more and more startups go into the area of making use of waste streams. So our latest investment, for example, is in protein distillery. They won the Sustainability Award from Chancellor Scholz, actually. And they make use of the residue of beer brewing. And they have a technology how they can split open the brewer's yeast and extract, without destroying the functional proteins inside, all the ingredients. And you can use it for E-number substitutes, methyl cellulose, but also gelling agents, so also substituting proteins again. And this topic of making use of waste streams is a big topic at the moment.
These are really big innovations, and these startups will change the way we will eat our food in the next years. I wonder, why is there still so little coverage in the media, in the public, about these startups and these companies? Question for you, Manon, but also a question for all of you. Why is there so little coverage?
I mean, the food topic is very personal, and people don't like it if you tell them you have to eat this, you have to eat that. So it's first of all, it's polarizing a lot. And where we see the example of Beyond Meat and actually Oatly, it's two interesting examples, because Oatly has a very positive connotation. It's growing still a lot. In Europe, we have a growth of 20%. Gen Z loves it. And Beyond Meat really got into this very polarizing discussion. And in the US, there's a strong meat lobby telling it's unhealthy. People, it's like vegan meat, fake meat. So I think it's the problem is really, how can you kind of get these discussions going without being kind of like a teacher, you have to do this and that, but really going to the preference of the people and have it in a positive way. I think this is why the industry now moved back from consumers again to the ingredient side on the industry side, because I thought, okay, from the consumers it's still difficult, but there's also a lot of hope once you go from the first 1.0 alternative protein movement that is plant-based to this new technologies that I talked about, fermentation, etc. You will have exceptional taste, exceptional nutritional value, and you can go lower by cost, and then the consumer acceptance will be much higher. So you always have to go with the consumer. But still, I mean, I think the media also with the ingredient side, resource topics, I think it's maybe too abstract also for people. Maybe to the other panelists.
I completely agree with you. I mean, you were telling us some of the news of the last startups, and I think most of us understand most of that. But think about media. Media wants to have the attention of most people. Wants to be for mass. If we're talking about this media, and then food, and especially this protein food, there you go into really different areas. You need to have a bit of not just the idea that you're interested in, but you should go a bit deeper into this topic. And I mean, if I think what media brings about that, then it's mostly this O's and R's, which means, oh, there are bugs used for this protein food. Ooh, this is ugly. Or, this is interesting. We solved this issue of feeding all the people on Earth. So they need these news, which is really like, oh, wow, this is super interesting. And I mean, for this, some of this content is complicated or a bit differentiated. It needs a bit of knowledge about that, and then a lot of people say, okay, that's not my case anymore. I need it really easy. I don't understand this. And I think this is a bit also the duty of us working in this field, that we find easy narratives everybody can understand. I found it really interesting what the Freie and Hansestadt Hamburg made together with the AI startup Summer AI. Because it's a artificial intelligence startup, and it has the ability to rewrite text to make them easier, understandable for everybody. I think we sometimes need something here too in this way, which makes things easier and understandable for everybody. And sometimes I also think that it's important to tell the people the consequences. What does it mean if we don't follow these new ways? What can happen? But what can we drive to the better if we turn around, if we change?
Hans-Peter.
I would like to add, we have the stories, they're nice, but still there's this eyeball business with media and advertising dollars. And I give you one example. Who knows BlaBlaCar? A lot say exists since 9 years, but they have no coverage. It's one of the simplest ideas to use our existing resources. And so I think it's on both sides, and we need more media brands. We need more festivals like this who address it, who bring it to a broader public and tell those stories. And the traditional media, anything that will change our habits, is not really liked by the traditional media. And I think food and mobility is quite similar. And so we just need new approaches, new formats besides the traditional medias.
First of all, I think that when I compare it to other topics like food or mobility or biodiversity, for example, I feel that those are very like emotional topics. Like people are like on either side in a way. Sometimes I feel with resources, it's just sometimes difficult to kind of translate the passion that's also in the room, like the passion that's behind. It's sometimes too abstract for people to really relate. If you don't translate it into very concrete things like the stuff I wear or the things I throw away, then all of a sudden it does have something like very close to home. Mm-hmm. I think what I would like to see more in the media is not so much the single stories. I think those are nice, like to show the innovations that are already out there. But I really would love to see more, media coverage about the patterns behind. So really, so people start to understand this is not just one single idea, but there is a new kind of paradigm that emerges, and the paradigm is, we can reuse resources, we can reduce without losing quality of things. We have Langlebigkeit, longevity is a principle that we see more and more in companies emerging, and I feel like if we see more of those patterns made explicit, maybe it also shows that there is this new paradigm really emerging. Mm-hmm.
And I also see a danger in the circular idea, because a little bit, it's fine, I still buy my car, big SUV, it's recycled, so everything is fine. I think we need to put it in a broader context. For me, the circular is also less is more, scaling down, using less energy resources and raw materials, then it's also easier to get this circular approach. And I think that's very important now, because we need this change, and we need to address the real issues. And this less is more approach, I think that had a lot of potential and a lot of things we consume and how we build our economy.
I think it's important that we change our views to a more holistic approach. I think this is super important. We often are focused on frames, looking into shelves and using narratives which are given. I think it's important that we are brave enough to think holistic and a holistic view. And in the past it was often seen as a way where there's no focus. But it's super important, I think, to change our thinking, because then we will change also our acting.
Mm-hmm. Manon.
Yeah, I think it's a sense of urgency doesn't come across. I think it's still abstract, and people always think, it's in 10 years, 20 years, and we have a cost of living crisis, I care about my daily income, and so on. And the World Meteorological Organization gave data this year that there's a 98% chance that within the next 5 years we will cross 1.5 degrees of global warming. So that's huge and has huge consequences. So all the reefs and the water, it's turning the colors. You have certain land is going underwater. You have climate extreme weather conditions. So, and I think people are not aware of that. It's really, really close. I think they became a little bit aware because of the natural disasters we've seen in the last 2 years with droughts and so on, and crop failures. But I think these consequences, they have to understand it's real.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. I could talk to you guys much longer, but we are already at the end of our panel. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, your knowledge, your expertise, and thanks everybody for listening. Thank you.